And if you're in recruiting, if I said, here's a magic wand, do you want 1 million candidates? You would never touch that wand. You'd be like, oh, no, that's not the last thing I want. The last thing they want is more. All they want is one candidate who's perfect. And because of the way human minds work, they really need two. One the hire manager could say yes to, and one the hire manager could say, yeah, no, I'm not quite. The founder says, okay, who are we and where are we going? It becomes a we and not an I. And the culture kind of manifests itself. It is crystal clear. What you offer, why you do it, how you do it, who you hire, in those terms, the differentiating value tends to become more and more clear as you grow.
Hello everyone, you're listening to The Recruiting Revolution. For today's episode, we have a special guest joining us from Chicago, United States. Please welcome James Ellis. James is principal of Employer Brand Labs in Chicago. He's an author, keynote speaker, practitioner, and a podcaster with a wealth of experience across multiple industries for over a decade now. James has developed brands for Fortune companies and startups as well. He also manages the #1 employer brand newsletter, Employer Brand Headlines, which help companies globally establish their brands and develop their ability to hire talent. Welcome, James, and thank you for joining us on the podcast today. To begin with, could you share your transformative journey from being a web developer to now embracing the identity of an employer brand nerd, as Google describes it?
Sure. It's amusing to me to call me a web developer. At the time, I knew HTML 4.1, and a little bit of CSS, and that's all it took to be a front-end developer. But really what I was a marketer. I was a marketing thinker. I didn't go to business school. I went to college for political science, but I have always been a marketing approaching person. And so invariably, when I was in conversations, people would say, oh, I need a website. And I would say, that's great. Happy to make one. Why? What is it going to do? What's it going to say? Who is it going to reach? How is it going to reach them? All of these questions are not web developer questions. All of these questions are marketing questions. And it took me a while to kind of realize I was living in this world where I had one foot in tech and one foot in marketing, which meant that I was either the most techie person in the marketing room or I was the most marketing person in the tech room. I never quite fit. So being in this space of not in a particular box made, I guess, perfect sense to me, for better or for worse. In the process, I think I've done every kind of marketing. I've done B2B marketing. I've done B2C marketing. I've done startup marketing. I've done retail marketing. I've done nonprofit marketing. I've done state government marketing. I've done event marketing. I've done pharmaceutical marketing. I've kind of done it all. And it's kind of all the same. Ultimately, when you get right down to it, who is your customer? Who do you want to be your customer? What do they care about? What do you offer that they will care about? Put it in a little package, put it in front of them, repeat. Now, most people go to school for 4 years to figure that out, but that's really what that is. And it didn't matter if I was selling pharmaceuticals to doctors or if I was selling library services to university students. It didn't matter. It was the same idea. And so I was kind of putting around, bouncing around from marketing to marketing. And I got poached by a big recruitment marketing firm. I had never thought of recruitment marketing as being a thing, but they said, well, you keep bouncing around from job to job, so you know how to look for a job. And that means you also kind of know how recruiters think. I'm like, yeah, I kind of do. They said, you also know marketing. I said, yeah. He goes, well, those things are a skill. I had no idea that job hopping was a skill. So that's where it kind of started. And I worked for the agency as a digital strategist. I, was the person who would talk about the tech stuff and talk about the big ideas and talk about the strategy and stuff. But I realized there was this team over in the Chicago office that didn't seem like it fit. It didn't quite work. It was understaffed. It had nothing but interns and former interns just making Facebook posts, and no one quite knew what it was supposed to do or how do you sell this or how do you price it. And in an agency, by the way, how you sell it and how you price it is the entire conversation. What it does is almost immaterial. So they had figured out what it does, but they hadn't figured out the important stuff. And I said, look, I come from a lot of content marketing work. I should be helping them. And I kind of took that team over. And over the course of 3 years, we went from a handful of kids to 19 staff. We had 60 some clients, big name clients. And we were building all their content. We were building all their social. We were building that stuff. And it took me a while to realize we called it inbound marketing at the time because that's kind of what it was. But it really was employer brand activation is all it was. And once that light kind of clicked for me, I went, I know what this is. I understand what it's missing. I understand there's some places where we can do a lot more good that we're missing out on. And that's where I kind of fell in love with employer brand, because it's this place where all of my marketing thinking makes sense. But unlike most marketing, where, you go to school and they teach you stuff that they learned 60, 80, 100 years ago. Hey, the 4 Ps, that is not new. Those things are not new ideas. Those are very old ideas. And having not gone to school, I realized I'm doing the same process over and over again. Understand the product, understand the audience, understand how to connect the dots. It was the same everywhere. This was a place where it wasn't the same, because it wasn't just about what does the audience want and what do you offer that they want, that there was this function underneath all of it that said, rather than say, how do we get the most audience, it was about how do we get the best audience. And it's a subtle difference at first blush, but once you start working on it, you realize it is night and day from what marketers do, right? You think of everything a marketer does about how they want more eyeballs and more leads and more generate and more, shelf space and more share of wallet, more. And if you're in recruiting, if I said, here's a magic wand, do you want 1 million candidates? You would never touch that wand. You'd be like, oh, no, that's the last thing I want. The last thing they want is more. They want better. All they want is one candidate who's perfect. And because of the way humans' minds work, they really need 2. One the hiring manager could say yes to, and one the hiring manager could say, yeah, no, not quite. And because the hiring managers love to feel like they're making that decision. And that's all you need. You don't need 1 million. You don't need 100. You don't need 10. You need 2. And once you realize that, you understand everything we're talking about on our career sites, on our job postings, on our social media is, not to put too blunt a point on it, totally wrong, because we've been stealing and cribbing from the wrong teams. We've been listening to marketing when we should have been listening to what recruiting needs, what hiring managers need. And this is the space in which we're starting to realize, we have over-indexed it the wrong way. Time to turn the boat around and say, what's it going to take? How do I get the one perfect candidate to fall in love with this job such that we don't have to go through the process and the dance of accusing each other of having bad resumes or lying or fibbing or not, that's not true. But to say, okay, look, we know what you can do. You know what we're about. Let's figure out how we can work together. And that collaborative hiring process inherently leads to better hires, better staff, better retention, cheaper hiring, all this stuff that you want in a company. This is the seed from which all those ideas spawn. Now, you asked for a very simple question, and I've given you a very long answer. And it's possible I've answered like 4 of your other questions, and that's not uncommon to me. So hopefully that helps. That's a good start.
So you're suggesting that quality matters rather than quantity. That's
I'm not suggesting. I'll put it on a billboard in Times Square. I will shout it from the rooftops. And the funny thing is, when I say it, marketers get all angry. They get all grumpy, like they're sitting on a tack. They don't like the idea. They don't care about quality. I mean, they do. I know what a marketing qualified lead is. I know what a sales qualified lead is. There are thresholds. But in the end, if they've got the dollar bill, the sale's going through. Right? They don't care. No one asks you when you buy a toothbrush, when's the last time you bought a toothbrush? How much experience do you have buying a toothbrush? Hey, there's a 2-month gap here when you didn't buy a toothbrush. Can you talk about this gap? Like, nobody cares about that. You have $1. I have a toothbrush. Let's swap. Bam. It's done. Right? Recruiting is a whole different beast. And so even if even if the salesperson knows and the marketer knows, the person I'm about to make this sale to will never use this product. This is the wrong product for them. But they demanded it and they have the money. Guess what? They're making that sale. Yeah. Recruiters can't think that way. They can't even begin. They wouldn't even know how to think that way. Like, it's so wrong-headed for them. So that is where the real difference is. And I think we don't do enough as recruiters and employer branders of drawing that line crystal clear. You need to make it crystal clear. Otherwise, we get overwhelmed by the marketing team who says, well, we've got, let's be fair, CMOs have way more power than the CHROs do. Way more power. They're the ones who are going to be CEOs. CHROs never quite seem to make that last jump, right? CMOs have the power. They got the budget. They got the staff. They got the ear. They got the influence. And there's the CHRO just going, trying not to get sued, trying to hire just enough people to keep the boat from falling over. Marketers are going to overrun. And so what employer brand needs to do is say, yes, and we have to change everything you're doing to fit in our particular world.
But, don't you think that it's been widely observed that, a higher number of job applications are often considered as strong employer branding?
Yeah.
A smaller number of applications may perceive as a less favorable. I think that's what the notion is nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's crazy because it's easy to get applications. All you do is say, hey, this job pays $1 million. That's all you got to do. Really easy. Very simple. Who cares? Or does the job actually pay that? No. Do you actually want any of the people who said, yeah, sure, that doesn't sound suspicious at all. I'll click that button. I'll give you my percent. No, like that's such garbage. And that's the problem, is because ultimately it boils down to this idea that it's very, very hard, if not almost impossible. And someone's going to figure this out, and I hope they do. And I'll buy them a drink or something. No one's figured out how to measure quality. When it comes to people, when it comes to candidate, there is no metric that makes any real sense for any level, right? It's, you can say, oh, well, there are people who stayed for 2 years. That's great, but that's such a backward lagging metric. You're like, I don't know. How do I know if this campaign and hired good quality people unless I wait 2.5 years? Oh my God, no. So there's no good measure of quality. So consequently, every recruiter's like, well, I'm going to get measured on something, so I better pick a metric that I can at least work with. Well, the answer is it's easy to measure quality or quantity, and that's what marketing does. So we'll just steal their dashboards, change a couple of words here and there, and cut the ammo. You've got the thing. I get it. It's an easy heuristic. It's an easy approach. I would say, let's think back historically. In the U.S., Google, number one place everybody wanted to work, most desirable place to work. Lots of little bunny ears hopping around the right. Everybody wanted to work there. That's great. Here's the challenge, though. Google had so many applicants, it literally stopped looking at their ATS. What they had to do was get to a point where they say, unless someone's referring you, we don't have that kind of time. And so consequently, their great employer brand actually produced this wrong door to the company that everybody was trying to go through, not realizing it was the wrong way to go. It's like, okay, you have a great employer brand, but you're using it wrong. It's not helping you hire great people. Now, can you say for certain that the person who got the referral was better than the best candidate who sent their application for an ATS? You absolutely cannot. You absolutely cannot. You were missing all sorts of diamonds in the rough in your ATS, but you simply weren't qualified because you simply had no facilities to actually figure out what the heck you got in your application. You actually got overwhelmed by your own quote unquote positive employer brand. That is why I don't believe in a good employer brand or a bad employer brand, or a positive or a negative. There is a lid for every pot. The company that you despise with every, like at a cellular level, you hate this company. Someone's going to say, yeah, I want that. And that's great. And that is fantastic. There's all sorts of companies I'd be like, you could not pay me enough to work there for me. They're completely antithetical to who I am as a human being. They got 100 applications for that job. People wanted that job, and good for them, right? And good for them. So it's not about strong. It's not about weak. It's not about positive. It's about specific. Is it clear? Is it clear what you're offering? Because when you go back to the Google example, it wasn't really clear what they offered other than nap rooms and free food and M&Ms and lots of coffee all the time and little perks here and there and a good salary. What are they doing all day? They're making and selling ads, right? This is not a place where you go if you're going to save the whales or save the trees or save the future. You're there to sell ads, right? Yeah. And yet somehow everybody wanted to work there because they're, in a lot of ways, they're coasting on a very older kind of sense of they're innovative. But I don't remember the last time a Gmail came out. I don't remember the last time a Google Maps came out. It's been a while since that kind of innovation has really kind of come from Google. There are pockets of it, certainly, and I love the company. Don't get me wrong. But when 1 million people applied, what exactly were they applying for? They were applying for snacks.
Yeah.
That's not why you change your life. Give me a break.
Yep. So, as you mentioned, that the job description should be specific, right? And not just the perks and stuff. So I listened to like one of your podcasts where you said that there should be a paragraph in the job description saying, this is why you should hate your job. This is why you will hate your job. Yeah.
Every job, your dream job has a part of it. You're like, oh yeah, I got to do paperwork. Oh yeah, I got to do that thing, right? Every job. If there wasn't, why would they pay you? It would be so much fun. You'd do it for free. It's called a hobby. They're wonderful. You should get some. But if it's going to be a job, there's a part of it you don't like. You're better off spelling it out. Now, here's a great example. I love bring this example up. Goldman Sachs, obviously everybody knows Goldman Sachs. In 2 years, everybody heard that story where the Washington Post said, oh, there's a scandal at Goldman Sachs. We hear they work their junior analysts 100 hours a week. Oh my, some of them never go home. Oh my, I can't believe how horrible. And you're like, those people lined up around the block. Do you have any idea how hard the Goldman Sachs interview process is? There used to be an app that you would download for your phone to teach you how to prepare for the interview, not how to do the interview, how to prepare. It was so hard. These people knew exactly what they were getting into. But Goldman Sachs' value proposition, hey, this job is great because you're going to get a pile of money by the time you're 40, right? It's fantastic. And by the way, you're going to work to the point where you won't believe how much you work. Yeah. It was crystal clear, the positive and the negative. You interview anybody, they will all tell you, yeah, they told us it would be this hard. They told us it would be this hard. This is exactly what we expected. In a lot of ways, like in a Glassdoor, and I don't know how, if your world cares about Glassdoor or not. In some places it does, in some places it really doesn't. But in a lot of ways, while Glassdoor wants to tell you that its score is a function of, this is what everybody thinks about your company, that's not true. It's a function of how well you set expectations. If you said, this is a really hard job and you're going to have to do this and you're going to have to do this, but you're going to get this, and you got that, 4 stars. Yeah. If you said, it's a really easy job and the perks are fantastic and shows up in his hard work, 1 star. It's not about good or bad. It's about how well you set the expectations. And part of setting expectations is the good and the bad. You have to lean into it. But recruiters, and more importantly, HR, and even more importantly, legal, hate the idea of saying anything negative, anything hard. They won't let you do it. And consequently, you are, let us be clear, and I love you, you are lying to every one of your candidates about what this job is. And you're stunned when they lie back to you. You're stunned that this resume is cherry picked. You're stunned that this resume is nothing but the wonderful things, and not that they got fired 3.5 times, not that, they set the building on fire that one time, not that they've been arrested 16 times. They never say that. Weird. It's like you're both lying to each other. You are. And that's the problem. Stop it. And I think companies know this. They know this. The problem is they think they want the candidates to stop lying first, and it doesn't work that way. They're pointing their guns at each other, and one saying, "Well, you put yours down first." Why? Why would this one put their gun? Why? There's no incentive whatsoever. But they want it, but whatever.
Yeah. And on your Glassdoor comment, in one of your books, Employer Brand Handbook, you've mentioned it that employer brand depends on your recruiter. So yeah, that's something I would love to know a little bit on how it depends, and how it is correlated, like how recruiters and the comments.
Yeah. So you got to first off understand your employer brand classically is, what do people think it's like to work there? Now, what happens is that they wake up, what a candidate doesn't do is wake up and say, I need a job. They go to their job board and they go, oh, there's a company I've never heard of. I'm going to click on the link and read all the story, read all about that company. That doesn't happen very often. For the most part, a lot of companies a lot of people, they know you a little bit. And it may not be the best things. Maybe they bought your product and didn't like it. Maybe they had to go through your customer service and really didn't like it. Maybe they, saw that news story that you were so sad to see, that your CFO grabbed the CMO's butt, right? There's all sorts of horrible things that your company could be known for. It'd be easy to pretend that no one sees them before they look for a job, but that's not true. Everybody knows that stuff. So in a way, you build a brand in your mind in the same way that a bird builds a nest. They just pick up whatever they see laying around and they make the nest out of that. And you can't say, hey, bird, you're making a bad nest, change your nest, because that's not how birds work. What you do is you replace the stuff around the birds with different stuff, and consequently it makes different nests. You want to change your brand and somebody sense your brand. You don't do it by saying, hey, we're this company now. You change it by replacing all the stories around that company, right? That's really, and there's where PR and comms and marketing and all sorts of other teams have a strong hand in. So anyway, when you think about that process of how brand information comes into someone's mind, the recruiter has a lot of roles to play. First off, think of the candidate who isn't a candidate yet. They're not looking for a job. They're very happy about their day, going to work, whatever they're doing. And you send this email, and it's that standard LinkedIn email. Hey, I came across your LinkedIn profile and I was impressed by your blah, 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 blah. These are all, right? It's a templatized bullshit. And guess what? You're a spammer. Hi, recruiters. Love you. When you do that, you are a spammer by definition. This is not my projection. This is not my judgment. This is simply what that is. And guess what? When you spam a candidate who isn't looking to talk to you, where you have any valuable to hand them, where there's no incentive for them to listen to you, you've just tagged your own brand as being that where the recruiters are a little bit spammy. Ding, that's bad. Okay. So that's before they've even started looking for a job. Now let's say they look for a job and they, apply, where they listen to you and they have that conversation. Are you telling the truth? Are you giving good information, or are you spinning like crazy? You have a big impact on what they think the brand is there. What about when they decide to apply and you talk to them and now they're in a candidate journey process? How much information did you give them? How well did you prep them for the interview? How much did you facilitate the conversation? How did oh, God help us all, how did the offer letter or the rejection call go? Did you just send them a text saying, hey, it's not going to happen, send by? Or did you have a conversation? Did you give some feedback? All of those things impact the employer brand. Every single one of those. So all those different touch points from a recruiter impacts the employer brand. And because as a candidate goes from kind of like not thinking about a job, I'm kind of thinking about the job, maybe I'll apply for things. I am definitely looking for a job. I want this job. Let's interview. As they go through that journey, their sensitivity to what your brand is about heightens. You become much more interested in what that company's all about. Because if it's just this company, other side of the city, and you're like, I don't care, that information is like useless information. It's like remembering your phone number from when you're 4. It's like, what are you doing with that information? That's not useful. Your brain should throw that stuff out. But, oh, wow, I might actually work here. Oh, I better ask some better questions. I better be very focused on what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. And suddenly all that information matters. And the recruiter is the facilitator for that information. Recruiters don't have to use the standard ATS emails, and messaging. They can actually write an email like a human. They might actually pick up a phone now and then, right? They might actually text you and say, this is clearly a real human being talking, blah, 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 blah. They have a lot of power here. I submit that while they have a lot of power, and there's still a fight, a very long-standing fight of where should employer brand live? Should it be marketing? Should it be comms? Should it be recruiting? And that's a separate conversation. That no matter where it lives, the recruiters are the first clients of the work. They are the first ones who are going to see the value of a good employer brand, of a well thought of, a well conceived, a well executed employer brand. However, most recruiters are not trained on how to do it. They want to ride the coattails of a strong brand, but they don't always want to do the work to help support the employer brand. And that's where things kind of fall apart. And I see it because recruiters, look, they got hard jobs, and I get that, and I don't begrudge them being a little busy, right? These, most recruiters are running around like crazy. I get that they don't have time to learn a lot of new stuff, but it is a situation where if they took a moment and sharpened their own axe, the speed at which they cut down trees would be much faster. So yeah, what seems like a waste of time to learn how to leverage that employer brand, it seems like a waste of time they don't have. It actually makes their lives so much easier that in not very long at all, they've actually recouped that time very quickly. And they're a stronger recruiter. And the flywheel effect kicks in because once all the recruiters get the brand and are communicating it and using it, it becomes stronger. Therefore, higher quality candidate, higher speed of hire, yada, yada, yada. It just speeds up and the snowball becomes an avalanche.
Got it. That's amazing. When we talk about the recruitment as a whole thing, the hiring process, like companies having lengthy hiring process, like having more than 4 to 5 interviews, can this affect the employer branding?
Yeah. Look, it's very hard I'm going to put it this way. Once you understand that the brand is a bird's nest, and you understand that every touch point, every experience you have with a brand impacts people's perception of your company, then you also have to understand that every time you say something that seems like a nice thing to say, but you don't follow it up because that other part of the company is caring about it, you hurt the brand. For example, it's March, National Women's History Month, and National Women's History Day, and everybody's going to talk about how much they care about women, and women are great. Women are crucial to our success, blah, 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 blah. How's your family leave policy? Here in America, it's very easy to say we give them the bare minimum, and most companies do, which is a sin on 17 different levels. We don't have to get into that. This isn't that kind of podcast. But to tell me that you care about women, but to offer the legal bare least amount of value we can offer to women when they're trying to have a kid, give me a break. How much do you really care about women? And that is a case where the marketing or brand team knows it's a positive thing to be seen as being caring about women. But the HR team, and really more importantly, the leadership, has decided they don't care. And so consequently, the company is now talking out of 2 different sides of their mouth, and a candidate goes, you're lying. And they see it. Now, that's a great, clear example. What's really happening is that because the whole company is effectively living that brand, if a candidate sees a claim over here and a disconnection or a dissonant approach to that claim over there, they realize that the company isn't being clear. And that's where things get in trouble. So things like, we're a really innovative company, or we know what we care about, we know what we're all about, and yet you have 4 interviews. Do you? Do you really? Or is this a game of politics? Now, if you tell me, if your brand is all about, look, and I've seen it, so I know it works. You can say, look, every new hire to us is incredibly critical. You are truly a part of the team. The second you step on board, we are 1000% transparent. So consequently, we take an extra step or two to make sure we're bringing the right person in. Yes, this slows this process down, but we think it brings on the kind of people who add the most value. And these are people who ultimately are the most satisfied with their job choice. Sure, take 7 interviews, do it. Makes perfect sense to me. I get it. I get how that serves you. I get how that serves me. Let's do that. But that's not how companies work. They say, we're really innovative. We move fast. We break things. How about 7 interviews? I'm sorry, what? How do those two things line up? So the reason why people kind of start to equate and have started to hit more and more that the employer brand is the soul of the company or the DNA of the company or what the company really cares about is because since the brand is the collection of the expression of everything a company does, everything a company does impacts the brand. So it's kind of a two-way kind of process. And here, I'm going to add a kicker onto that because you had a little moment where you went, oh, yeah, right. That makes perfect sense. Here, guess what? The employer brander is responsible for all those things. Yeah. So they're responsible when the CEO says something stupid. Maybe they say something a little bit racist. Whoops. Oh, no. Right. Let's say the product fails. Let's say the customer service sucks. There's 11 million ways that companies could screw up their employer brand. You have one person who's responsible, but they have no power. Uh-oh. So you can see where this thing is a mess. It is a game of juggling cats. I mean, and I'm not mixing my metaphors there. You might as well be juggling with cats. It's that hard, which is why, let's be clear, only crazy people do this job. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. I know I'm crazy and you can tell. I can hear it. I know it. I am absolutely nuts, but this is a crazy making job. This is what this is all about.
Yeah, that is so true. You know, when you talk about transparency, so do you believe that, there were tons of individuals who had an offer in hand, but were unfortunately, let go before even starting their first day.
Yeah.
I think there might have been like a very disconnection between the leadership and the recruitment or anything in between. So do you think that impacted the employer brand in any way? Like there are big companies who did that.
100%. And here is how, look, you have to understand that everything a company does is a signal. It's a signal ultimately about what they care about. Pinterest is a great brand. I think it does a great job being crystal clear that it cares about its people, that it empowers them and supports them. Everything they say is about empowering or supporting their people. They do a great job of that. Am I going to be surprised if they suddenly say we're firing half the staff? Yeah, because that doesn't sound like they're supporting or empowering their people. Now, if you're telling me that, I don't know, some guy who might be a billionaire who owns an electric car company decides to buy a social media platform, fires half the people, not shocked at all. That doesn't impact the brand because I know that's who that guy is. That's what he's about, right? It's a further reinforcement of what our perceptions are. So, when Alon shows up, and people are like, oh, the company's going to tank. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot of people who kind of dig that guy. And so while there's a dramatic decrease in the people who want to be there, there's a whole new audience of people who are like, oh, yeah, we love that guy. And that can work. And in a lot of cases, let's be clear, he's made that work. Would I ever work for him? No, thank you, 7,000 times. But there are people for whom that fits. And that's why I keep going back to this idea. It's a lid for every pot. And what a company does, everything it does, from who it hires, who it promotes, who it fires, who it rewards, the stupid choices it makes, the CEO who's firing people on Zoom, you name it, all the stupid stuff we've seen over the last 2 years. And most of it has been insanely stupid, right? It's not even dumb. It's just stupid, right? Come on, be a person. It impacts because that's what you're telling people. That's who that company is. They may say a lot of nice things. It's very easy. Look, I'm a maker of websites. It's very easy to make a website where you make yourself sound amazing. Who are you really? And that's what employer brand is all about. Who are you really?
Yeah, that is so true. According to you, how has employer brand evolved over the years? Like you've been in the industry for so long, and you've seen everything from scratch. So I think yeah.
Okay, so first off, I am standing on the shoulders of giants. There is no question. So employer branding, here's your little history lesson. Cracking my knuckles, getting ready. The history lesson is Simon Barrow started in 1991, England. He effectively said, why don't we take the way we sell fish fingers? Because in the United States, it's fish sticks. In the UK, it's fish fingers. I always like making that joke. Why don't we take the way we sell fish fingers and use it to sell jobs? And at the time, no one's really had that thought. And it kind of was like, yeah, why don't we? That's amazing. And he took product positioning, product marketing, and applied it to jobs. And it was in itself a absolute quantum leap of thinking. By itself, just take a moment and appreciate what he did. Absolutely. The problem is the world says, that's amazing. Let's keep going. But the branding kind of stopped there. There was about a 15, 20-year gap where it kind of went, no, we just take product marketing and we apply it to jobs. We're done. Yeah. And I think what happened was, there's so much bias here. And so I own my own bias. I get that. What I think happened is England, because it started employer branding, ran with it and started applying it everywhere. So in a lot of ways, the UK EMEA market understands the root of employer branding way better than the US does because they've been living with it for so long. Now they understand a fairly limited approach to it. So where EMEA UK was kind of growing, thinking about, let's position like a company. The US said, position like a company, buy a bunch of ads. And so we've been living this recruitment marketing world where it's all ads all the time. And you got programmatic and Google and all this SEO and all this other stuff. It's all about how you buy and buy space of ads. About 7 years ago, we switched where Americans went employer brand. Hey, hold on, there's something to this. And the UK went, this is boring. Why don't we figure out ads? Yeah. And honestly, right now, for my money, the UK EMEA space is where all the interesting ad recruitment marketing thinking is. They got real copywriters. They got the best programmatic stuff. That is where the interesting recruitment marketing stuff is. Where the most interesting employer brand stuff's on the US side right now, because we're reinventing it again. A lot of the way that Simon Barrow did it, we're doing it again. So, I look at what Richard Mosley did for the UK. I am simply building on the top of what he and Simon and a couple of other people have been building. And I know that I'm not going to take it all the way. I'm trying to push it up a couple of steps so that someone can take it from me and keep it going. Is that person going to be in the US? Maybe. Is that person going to be in Japan? Maybe. Is that person going to be in EMEA? Who the heck knows? But for me, that's kind of how it's all grown. It was recruitment marketing on the US side, employer brand on the UK side, a big switch. And now I can see the UK catching up. I can see EMEA saying, we can get more creative in our employer branding. Yes, you can. And the US going, okay, where are we taking this? What is this really going to be?
Got it. So is there like a way to measure employer branding, like any matrices? Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a step back. Everybody wants the metric number and everybody wants the number to be simple. The answer is 7.